I'm Water Elemental, welcome to Top Deck. Today we're going to be looking at Magic the Gathering, but we're not going to be looking at any standard events, we're not going to be talking about any Pro Tour stuff, we're not going to be even talking about cards in the normal tradition. What we're going to be talking about is lore and the multiverse. Now this is hopefully going to be an ongoing series I do where we jump from one set to another, talking kind of about the storyline, important characters, and how that kind of translates into the card game and interesting aspects of the cards in that set. I'm going to be talking about game mechanics, interesting characters, stuff that happens and that a lot of people don't really realize that goes into this game. And the best way to start out is kind of explaining what Planeswalkers are and kind of the multiverse. These are the two main aspects of the game. Now let's kind of start about the multiverse. The multiverse is, in theory, layered universes on top of each other. And the best way to kind of describe it is you have one planet, let's call this one Earth. You have Earth right here. And in a different plane of existence, we could have another planet here in our same orbit, same sun, all that stuff. But it's not Earth. It could be a totally different planet, different continents, and ruled by cat people, elves, it could be entirely made out of elemental, stuff like that. And that's one plane of existence, and there's millions upon millions of these. And essentially it's their way of containing stories and containing worlds without them bleeding into each other and creating paradoxes, multiple timelines, all this crazy stuff that you see in a lot of card games and stuff like that. A lot of paradoxes and things that should happen, could be happening, what's going on. It prevents that from happening and prevents unnecessary crossovers unless they want them to, and we'll get into that later when we actually have a couple crossovers. And that's one reason why that the multiverse is there. Now, you're wondering, how do we get to these worlds? That involves what are known as Planeswalkers, and I can't really describe it myself. I'm going to quote Wizards of the Coast on this one and kind of put my own epic spin on it.
A Planeswalker is a powerful mage who is able to travel across the planes of existence. There are infinite worlds across the multiverse, and
now, Planeswalkers are born with what is known as the Spark. This enhances magical abilities, as well as allows them to travel from one plane of existence to another. Most cases, the Spark is activated in near-death experiences or other tragic events, like mass graves, epic battles, something that just changes the way they look at life. The Spark energizes itself and kind of awakens that power. This is probably one of the biggest plot developments in most cases, because it's, even if they're not a Planeswalker, the Spark is a very, very recognized item to magical people, as I stumble upon all this stuff. The best way I can describe it is, even though some people aren't magicians, they still are able to try to get a spark, or they use it in one way or another. And in some cases, like in the Mirrodin storylines, they talk about the spark being used to save the world. And we'll get into that a little later on. Spoilers. Now, Planeswalkers in the card game itself were originally represented as just normal legendary creatures. This meant that they didn't have special effects, or they didn't have special card types for themselves. They were just represented with attack, defense, and a legendary creature type, meaning you only could have one on the field at a time. The best case scenario to show kind of the difference between how they were represented then and now is Nicobolus. He was created originally way back when, and he was re-released as a Planeswalker, given a new detail and stuff like that. He was originally looked at as just a normal dragon, he has special effects, and also reading a book for some reason. But now he's more badass, he has horns, he has all sorts of really cool stuff to him. And the way that Planeswalkers work now, once they were released as a new card type in Lorwyn, they are kind of level up, in a way. You can, at the beginning of your turn, you can add or remove points to gain effects or not gain effects. Hinder an opponent, gain life. It's sort of like another character. You can attack it, which is a very special ability, because in Magic the Gathering, if you don't already know, you only can attack an opponent. You can't attack creatures, or you can't attack other items. But this allows you to attack a Planeswalker to remove counters. And this is a great way to counter, which is a neat concept, because technically a player is a Planeswalker. So that kind of adds a little bit of more complexity to the game, meaning that you can add targets, you can take out a Planeswalker, or you can take out your opponent, which is really great. Planeswalkers were added later on in the game officially, but multiverses weren't actually added as a card. They are added as block sets and as kind of lore to each one of the booster sets that come out into the game, but there wasn't actually any cards introduced for the game until they added the Planes Chase minigame. This is where you got a box of cards that each represented a different plane or a different area in the multiverse of Magic the Gathering. And what you do is you would roll the dice and you get to flip cards up. Unfortunately, I don't own any. It wasn't really something I played back at the time. But it's really fun. It kind of encapsulates what each zone's memorable moments are. Land of War had the Land of War effect added to every one of the cards. Like tap it, you create green mana or something like that. Just something small that would be added. Just kind of a nod to players that played for a long period of time and just kind of recognize certain locations. But this is just a brief example. This is just a lot of background information. We're not actually going to get into any sets this time, but when we do, we're probably going to get into one of my favorite sets of all time, Mirrodin, a world made entirely of metal. This is where I started playing Magic the Gathering, and this is where I kind of got into the whole lore of the game. So until next time, I'll see you then.